If you're looking for some new creative ideas for your 360 camera, this is the video for you. I'm going to take you step by step, showing how I do cinematic camera moves. All right, so grab your 360 camera and let's get started. First up, let's talk about the gear. I'll be shooting on the Insta360 X5, which shoots 8K video and 11K time-lapse. And now it comes in satin white, which is what you're seeing here. I filmed this shot, as well as all the other non-time-lapse shots in this video, at 8K resolution and 24 frames per second. I'll also be trying out the new ND filter kit, which reduces the light entering the lens, allowing me to use slower shutter speeds and get cinematic motion blur. They snap on the lens like this, and then the X5 auto-detects them and adjusts its parameters accordingly. There's an ND16, ND32, and ND64. Take a look at this shot. See the motion blur on the water? It's that motion blur, because of the ND filter, that makes the movement in the shot feel natural. Also, you may have noticed before strange flickering on LCD screens like this, and also flickering of lights. Well, if you use an ND filter and fix your shutter speed, it gets rid of all these visual artifacts. 360 cameras are great for time-lapse because you don't have to worry about the framing as long as you have a good angle to shoot from. But you do need to pay careful attention to your camera settings. For these night time-lapses, I used the 11K time-lapse mode and I shot at 2-second intervals. This is actually the fastest interval you can shoot at when you're shooting 11K. I used manual exposure and I set my shutter speed to 1 second, which is half the duration of the interval. So if you're doing a 2-second interval, you want your shutter to be 1 second. I used the ND16 filter on the X5, even though it was nighttime, because otherwise the image would have been too bright, so I just needed to darken it to get the right exposure. And then to bring the exposure back up just a little bit, I adjusted the ISO. So to recap, first I set a 2-second interval with a shutter speed of 1 second, and I used the ND16 filter on the lens. And then I adjusted my ISO to fine-tune things and get exactly the right exposure. Then I just set up the X5 on my extended selfie stick on top of the throw pod, creating an ultra-tall tripod, and I stood back and let the time-lapse go. The really cool thing about shooting 11K time-lapses is that you have endless ways to reframe the shot since you can zoom in so far to the image. If you don't have ND filters or you just don't want to use them, you can still get a really nice looking time-lapse. You'll just have less motion blur because you'll be using a faster shutter. Here's another time-lapse I did without an ND filter. There's still a lot of blur on the cars because they're moving fast. There's just less blur than I would have gotten if I was using the ND. Time-lapses aren't just for cityscapes. To create this Escalator time-lapse, I used the 5.7K mode, which allows a faster half-second interval, and I used the ND64 filter this time. Then I stood behind Kobe on the escalator, and I used her body to hide my hand that was holding the stick. And then we just held perfectly still, and the X5 recorded 2 shots every second, and this is the resulting time-lapse. The reason I wanted to use a half-second interval here is because it gave me a much longer time-lapse for the same amount of time recorded. Here's another version of the same kind of time-lapse, only this time I used a mini tripod and set it down on the steps in front of me on the escalator. And this is the resulting shot. If you want a much more dramatic time warping type of effect, go ahead and use the 11K mode and the 2-second interval on the escalator. The results are going to be pretty wild, but your time lapses will also be really short. But you can actually use each shot twice, once facing yourself and once facing away from you. Here's one more fun time-lapse idea using a supermarket shopping cart. I put the X5 at the bottom of the shopping cart, still using that ND16 filter, and I used a flexible tube instead of a tripod to secure it in place. I recorded at 11K with the 2-second interval, and then I just went shopping. And here's the result. Again, I was able to use that same shot twice, once facing each direction. Now here's the really important trick about reframing this particular shot. In the Insta360 Studio desktop app, I had to enable direction lock in order to keep the shot pointing forward in the shopping cart, because the shopping cart kept changing directions as I was turning corners. If I had not enabled direction lock, it would have looked like this. So I was able to direction lock it facing forwards, and I was also able to direction lock it facing the rear to get this selfie view of myself shopping. Okay, so those are some of my tips for using the Insta360 X5 and some of the fun new accessories from Insta360. So cheers, and I'll see you next time.